Hello and welcome to another episode of Amon Sheeran's Pirate Radio podcast. On today's episode, we have another illustrious guest, Mike Petrina, founder of Sayville Running Company and a Long Island running legend for several different reasons that we'll get into today. So, Mike, thank you for doing this.
Oh, thanks for having me. I was not an original founder of Sayville Running Company, but I've been with them since the early days. So I get associated with SRC quite frequently. But thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to chatting, and I've only heard the best things about you.
What have you heard? And from who?
Well, I mean, I know you've been doing podcasts on a bunch of different topics, and just kind of, I know Gerard has drawn kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, like inspiration from you, kind of just starting his podcast and just kind of putting his nose to the grind. So, he's kind of following your example that you set there.
Yeah, that's great. And we'll get right into it. Because I know you know Gerard and Sean, and I'm happy to help Gerard a little bit with his podcast. But what I want to start off with is your running career. And the question I always ask my running guest is, what made you want to start running competitively?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I started running in general with my dad, just as something to kind of stay in shape for other sports, basketball and lacrosse mainly. And then when I got to 7th grade and cross country, like I didn't play a fall sport. I didn't do football. I didn't do soccer. So I joined the cross country team, and that's kind of how it started. And I found out that I was pretty good at it. And as the years went on, I finally committed to running full time my junior year of high school.
Cool. And where'd you go to high school?
I went to St. John the Baptist in West Islip.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So at that time, I know now they have a great program. How was it back then?
So honestly, it was the laughing stock of the Catholic High School Association at the time. Yeah. So my freshman year, we had 7 guys on the track team. It was like 4 sprinters and 3 freshman distance runners.
Wow. Okay.
And then my sophomore year was Coach Wood's first year, who's the coach there now.
Woody.
And that's Woody. And that's basically when the program started turning around. By the time I was a senior, we were fairly competitive in cross country and track. I want to say the team grew to like 60 kids my senior year, but now Coach Wood gets regularly up to 100 kids out for the track team.
Wow. Yeah, the 100 kids reminds me of my high school days at Syosset, when the team picture was just like you could barely fit on the frame. But yeah, at what point did you fall in love with the sport?
Probably like my sophomore year of high school. Coach Wood came in and he was training and running marathons, and that kind of appealed to me as this is something I can do beyond just high school and college. So that's kind of when it really appealed to me, and I started really getting into it. And that year is when Alan Webb ran 3:53 for the high school mile. So, there was a lot of track coverage going on at that time.
Definitely, for sure. I think that's kind of the genesis of a lot of the track coverage we see now is the Alan Webb high school mile, and that record stands, right?
The outdoor Alan Webb high school record still stands. Yes. I mean, a lot more high schoolers are breaking 4 minutes in the mile, but not quite getting down to that low 350 range, which is pretty elite.
Yeah, elite for anyone, not just a high schooler. Do you remember having a breakout race in high school?
So my sophomore year, I would say, was like my breakout year. That year we scored like 4 points at our league championships, and they were all mine. I scored in the varsity events. I scored in the mile and the 2 mile. I ran 4:31 and 9:50. And I think that day at league championships there was kind of like, I think this can be like my future.
Definitely. Are there any other races you want to highlight from your high school career? So many, I know. I don't want to.
Yeah. I mean, I think my junior year when I ran 9:37. So the Catholic League has their own like state qualifying meet, and
Right.
we call it like the Catholic state meet. And I don't know where I was ranked going in, but I was gunning for a spot to go to the Federation meet or the public school state meet.
Right.
And I closed in like 65. I wound up finishing second and just shy of the 9:35 qualifying time. I ran 9:37. Um, but the race just sticks out to me because I like beat a lot of the runners that had been beating me all season, and I was pretty pleased with how I raced that race.
Gotcha. Yeah, it sounds like an exciting race. I'm sorry you fell just 2 seconds short, but it sounds like you were fully committed and obviously in love with the sport at that point.
Yeah, definitely.
And talk about I did my research. Talk about your decision to attend Stony Brook and compete for them.
Yeah, so honestly, I went on a few recruiting trips, mostly unofficial, and I talked to a lot of different coaches. But when I went to Stony Brook, the one thing Coach Andy Ronan, who's still there, he said to me, which really stuck, and I really felt like he cared, was that when I left Stony Brook after all my eligibility was up, that I would still enjoy and still pursue running. He was not going to burn me out. He was not going to run me until I couldn't run anymore. So he was really looking after uh, my well-being as an athlete, a person, and something he knew that if running was going to be a part of my life, that I could carry beyond the 4 or 5 years I was at Stony Brook.
Yeah, that's an interesting part. I didn't even think of that in terms of the recruiting process, but that does happen to a lot of college athletes where they get by the time they graduate, they're totally they want nothing to do with the sport after that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the guys I went to high school with that went to different schools, by their sophomore or junior year, they had quit the team. A lot of guys that I had competed against and who beat me thoroughly in high school were also flaming out. So I really feel like I made the right decision for my well-being overall as a runner.
A lot of times it happens in college where coaches expect you to move up an event group. Did you experience that?
Meaning like ability wise or distance wise?
Distance wise.
So no, so he basically slow played us. Like, my training may not have been where I needed to be for running solid 5Ks, but I raced mostly, 1500, 3K and 5K in my first year. He didn't expect anything out of me during cross country. He knew it was going to be a process. So I really appreciated that.
Definitely. And what was your training like? What were you running per week, and what were some of your favorite workouts?
So at Stony Brook, when I was running my best, we were on a 7-day cycle. I was running like somewhere between 70 and 80 miles a week. On Tuesday, we would do some sort of interval workout, 400s and thousands were very common. And then on Friday, we would do a 25 to 30-minute tempo run and a long run on Sunday. And yeah, and that my junior year, like I said, that was my best year college-wise in terms of training and racing. So I ran 15:08 for the 5K that season, 8:40 for the 3K, and a 32 and 40 10K in outdoor.
32, 40, 10K. Wow. So those are pretty elite from where I stand. I'm trying to think how to phrase this. Like for me, I was never satisfied. I'm still not satisfied what I've accomplished in my athletic career because I don't feel like I've fulfilled my potential. After running those times in college, do you feel that way?
I guess the only regret I have is that I never broke 15 minutes. That 15:08 is still my PR. I've run a bunch of low 15s post college, but never dipped under 15. And really post collegiately, I basically changed my focus from track to the road running pretty much immediately. So I really didn't focus on track racing too much after I graduated from Stony Brook.
Gotcha. Yeah. But those are great times, obviously. Speaking of road racing, I was talking with Gerard a little bit while preparing for this episode, and he said um, while you were never professional, you were always a threat to win any like road race, and still to this day. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I think on like the local level, I've a threat to win. Showing up, going to compete. I think that's what I've kind of become known for. Um, like if I show up to a race, I'm there to race. I'm there to compete. It's going to be an honest effort. So um, if some runners will show up and try and get a cupcake victory, but if I'm there, they know it's not going to be easy. Um, so whenever I show up to a race, that's my goal, to compete up front. And if somebody's faster than me, they're faster than me, but they're going to have to out race me to win.
To quote Steve Prefontaine, someone may beat me, but they're going to have to bleed to do it. So I respect the hell out of that. Obviously, it was really corny to quote Steve Prefontaine in the middle of a podcast, but I definitely respect that competing, and I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah, there's so many different corny mantras you can go with, but I mean, just that's how I run. That's how I am. Like, Gerard can tell you, like, just about consistency and working hard. That's what I'm all about.
Okay, for sure. I want to get into your coaching career. I know you lived in New Zealand for a period of time, and you're coaching your you were coaching your now wife. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, yeah. So do we want to talk about living in New Zealand or coaching, or
Yeah, we'll
I
start
mean,
with New Zealand, and then we'll go to coaching.
yeah. So for those who don't know, my wife now, Leonora, is from New Zealand. I met her at Stony Brook. She was already on the team when I decided to go to Stony Brook. She was a year ahead of us. We started dating, and so basically, because of all the different visas and restrictions, she lived here for a year, and then when that year was up, she had to move back to New Zealand. She didn't have any other options to stay here, and New Zealand offered a similar 1 year working visa to live there for a year. So I decided I would do that. So from March of 2008 to March of 2009, I lived in New Zealand. So after I graduated at the end of 07, packed up and moved to New Zealand for a year, which was, I think, like the greatest thing I could have ever done.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like a dream. Talk about some of the running scene in general in New Zealand and some of the sites. I imagine they must have been breathtaking.
Yeah, definitely. So the running scene in New Zealand is very club oriented, club based. So that was good. I immediately joined a local track, running club, Harrier Club as they were called. But like, weekly meetups. But like the one thing I noticed instantly from being in New Zealand, from the moment I landed, we drove home and there were just people out everywhere, walking, running, biking. Like, you see that occasionally around here, but like literally you couldn't go on a run in New Zealand without seeing dozens of people out and about.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like, I guess, Colorado type
Yeah,
of vibe.
exactly. So we lived, well, Leonora's from just outside of Auckland, which is their main city. And we lived fairly close to Auckland. So we'd spend a lot of time downtown, which, I mean, downtown was like 4 blocks. There's only 1 million people in Auckland. So it's not as, you know, out of the 4.5, 5 million people that live in New Zealand, 1 million of them lived in the Auckland region. But yeah, I mean, and then the free beaches. So the beaches were wonderful. Just trail systems galore. So we could run, a different route every night and not get bored.
That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely, once this whole pandemic is over, I definitely want to travel to Australia, New Zealand, and it sounds like a great place to train. But
Yeah.
transitioning back into coaching, what influenced your decision to start coaching?
So my senior year at Stony Brook, I actually got an email from Woody, Coach Wood, saying, "Hey, I'm looking for assistant coaches. You guys were my first class. You're graduating. Any interest in coaching cross country?" And so I'd kind of thought about it before that, but not really, nothing formal. And then I was told Woody I'd be down to coach cross country, and he wound up putting me in charge of freshman cross country that fall.
That's awesome.
So that's how I started coaching.
Definitely. And I guess we'll jump right into this, and then we could go back to some different coaching stuff later. But you said you had a solid Sean Kildare story. So
Uh, yes. So not to embarrass Sean, but
no, no,
Sean
no,
is like,
no. That's the whole point,
yeah.
is to embarrass Sean.
So I mean, I forget what year of coaching I was in when when Sean joined the team, but he's he's like the politest, nicest guy of all time, and he's a teenage boy. So while most teenage boys are making fun of me for being in my 20s and having a wife and saying inappropriate things, he's like polite. So the first time he meets my wife, again, we're in our mid 20s. He calls her Mrs. Petrina, and she's like, no, you call me Leo or Leonora. Like, no, Mrs. Petrina, that's Mike's mom. But he like refuses. So every time he sees her, it's just Mrs. Petrina. I mean, to this day, he still calls me Coach Petrina, because I guess Sean is probably the age now that I was when I first knew Sean. So, right. But like just the politest, nicest kid, and just very, very polite. And I mean, not that it's an embarrassing story, but he's just such a good dude that want to get that out there.
Yeah, no, definitely. I knew that going in, having been teammates with Sean, but I could definitely see that happening and him refusing to break politeness, I guess you could say.
Definitely.
Yeah, and your wife, obviously, for those who don't know, who has had a lot of success in the marathon, and she qualified for the Olympic trials. Can you talk about kind of her training process going into that event?
Yeah, so I always joke that Leonora is like the real runner. I just fake run, like so she qualified for the 2016 and the 2020 Olympic trials. In 2014, that was her first marathon at Philadelphia, where she ran a 2:39:58. So
wow.
Yeah, the training was intense. She quit her day job and worked part-time at Sayville Running Company, but mostly focused around the training. And so, I mean, it's a long story, but she basically found out that like a 7-day cycle just wasn't for her. So like whenever she could run 60 to 70 miles a week pretty consistently with some good workouts, but whenever she tried to make that jump to that next level that marathon runners want to get to, she'd get hurt. So like 80 miles a week in a 7-day cycle just got her injured a lot. So we came up with a plan that she was going to go on a 9-day cycle, which is very similar to a cycle a lot of athletes are using now. So instead of trying to cram everything in the 7 days, we kind of spread it out over 9 days. And so you get about 72 hours between hard efforts.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Obviously, all very scientific, and some stuff will probably be over my head at least. But I wanted to ask, because you said you started off assistant coaching, and obviously you have a strong connection to your wife, obviously. But what was that process like, transitioning from being a high school coach to a potential Olympians coach?
Yeah, so I just really just reading and absorbing everything, kind of talking to coaches, Coach Andy for one, just kind of really getting everybody's different takes on things. The high school system here, I find is, I mean, after the fact is, it's centered around racing, which I think after this pandemic, you can see that training centered around like training blocks as opposed to racing all the time is definitely more beneficial for the athlete. I mean, just look what like the professional runners are doing right now after a year of solid training. So I think if we can transition to more training based sessions and then race when we're ready, that definitely is slightly more beneficial. But that's kind of off topic there.
No,
Um,
just to jump in on that point, I have to give
sure.
my high school coaches credit. Coach Cafriero and Coach Chessa, we would always get kind of made fun of for never racing until the county meet, and
Yeah.
so where it counted, and we were always really successful, and we'd always score well in the 4x800. My senior year, we were second in the state to Chaminade, and I give a lot of credit to their training uh, prowess and their knowledge not to burn kids out.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, yeah, I know you said you ran for Syosset, and definitely one of the programs that's definitely high maintenance, but a high level of performance. And I would agree. Racing dual meets during the season just burn you out for when the meets actually count.
Yeah, I think I've ran one dual meet in my high school career, and that was when I was moved up on the team in middle school. So that says it all right
Yeah.
there, I think.
Yeah. So I would say that that's perfect. Um, yeah, I mean, the good thing with my wife was she was like very open. You know, we collaborated sometimes, but most of the time she took whatever I thought was right and just went and did it, you know. And that's how I kind of started forging my training philosophies.
Definitely. Yeah. So obviously a lot of trust for her in you, and obviously you have to back that up with results and knowledge. And it sounds like you did that. So I give you a lot of credit for kind of adapting and learning on the fly. And obviously she's had a lot of success. So credit to you there as well. Um, Talk a little bit about how you got into Sayville Running Company.
Yeah, so just randomly we were out at a long run. So there's a group that meets in Smithtown on Sundays at 7:30 a.m. at Uncle Giuseppe's. They call themselves the River Road Rats. This was back in I want to say 2007 now. I had been going with a running buddy of mine, Tommy Natuno, for a few summers. So he lived around the corner from me in West Babylon, and I did a lot of my summer training with him when I was home from school. And he found out about this group. He started going during the school year, and then he started bringing me around on Sundays during the summer. And so I was done with Stony Brook, and I was going every weekend now. And it just so happened that Brendan Barrett and Ryan Sultan and that crew happened to know somebody else that was a River Road Rat, and they showed up at the run. Um, Funny story is though, me and Natuna, so me and Tommy, so it's a loop that you can do. There's 12-mile option, 14-mile option, 18, 20, 22. You could, you're training for a marathon. You could have any distance you need when you turned up with this group. And so we show up. We're about like a couple of minutes late, and we see the group just taking off as we pull up. And so now we're trying to run them down, and we get to a spot where it's like, okay, go left for 12 miles or go right and you go 14. And we went right for 14. We guessed wrong. They went 12. We never caught anybody. And so we meet them up in the parking lot afterwards, and we're chatting. And Brendan basically invited us down to a track workout on Tuesday, and that's how it started. I started going to track workouts at Sayville Running Company.
Right. And so it's very serendipitous. Obviously, it worked out and says great success and a huge influence on the Long Island running scene in general. What are your future goals for SRC?
I think the big thing about SRC that has us going really well at the moment is that we're a resource for the community. Yes, we sell running shoes. Yes, we sell running apparel. But overall, we try to keep that camaraderie level in the community very high, putting on virtual events while there's no other options, putting out, tech information on our social medias so people can kind of grab information and do what they like. So I think we just want to keep operating at that level. I know we have a bunch of things that we kind of have in the pipeline that we want to get set up and in place, but just due to the pandemic is making it a little bit harder to kind of roll out. I know Gerard has been very diligently working on a project that we are really excited about, but just because pandemic restrictions, are just having a hard time of when to release it, when to roll it out. But we just want to be there for the running community. So, and I think we're doing that. So basically, if you're a runner and you're on Long Island and you need advice or tips or anything running related, walking related, fitness related, just stop on down at Sayville or Smithtown Running Company, and a staff member will always be willing to chat. No pressure. So if you have any questions, you can DM us, email us, whatever you need. We're here for the runners.
Yeah, I definitely think the running community on Long Island is on the rise with things like the Hoka Mile and all these virtual events and in-person racing when it's possible. And I think a lot of credit goes to the SRC and similar groups. So thank you and commend you for that.
Oh, our pleasure.
Yeah, definitely. So I know you also do coaching now for more of the everyday runner. Um, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So we have a program out of the store called the Distance Training Program, and it's something we started back in like 2013, and it was just a place for people training for distance events, half marathon, marathon, to train with people with common goals and aspirations. And in that first session, we had 11 runners sign up, and it's been on the rise ever since then. Pandemic put a little bit of a damper on it, but I still have 20 to 30 runners that I'm working with, whether they're meeting up with us or not because of the pandemic. They're still getting their work done, and somebody's there to still hold them accountable. So basically, it's just a group of runners, looking to run half marathon and marathons and finish feeling good. You find an online program that's not really personalized to yourself, and you either get frustrated or you have a miserable experience with the marathon, and it kind of puts you off. So we're trying to avoid people having miserable experiences with the half marathon and marathon distance.
Definitely. And I can definitely relate to that. Like I said earlier, I wasn't really satisfied with how my college career ended. So I'd definitely be interested in joining you guys.
Yeah. And we have all abilities from the, person trying to qualify for Boston to, just looking to beat the cutoff. My biggest success story is this guy, Matt. We call him Matty Ice. He started with the program because he wanted to get to the beer tent at the Marine Corps Marathon before they ran out of beer. So Marine Corps has like a pretty strict cutoff because of the way the city is. So you have to get to certain points before a certain time or they pull you off the course. So in his first time doing Marine Corps, he gets pulled off the course. So he joins the group, and it's the 6 hour cutoff. So he's like, I got to finish in under 6 hours. And so we get him under 6 hours by quite a bit. I want to say he ran like a 5:20 something. But when he got to the beer tent, they were out of beer. So now his second goal now is, he comes back the next year. His goal is to get to the beer tent before they run out of beer. And he ran right around 5 hours, I want to say. Got to the beer tent. They still had beer, so he was pretty happy. And then he's gone and run under 5 hours now. He's run like a 4:51 at the LA marathon.
Nice.
Somebody like him coming down, just putting in the work, being very consistent, and he's improved from not being able to finish a marathon in the cutoff time to being a 4 hour and 50-minute marathon runner.
Awesome. Yeah. I definitely want to try the half marathon. I can barely string together like 3 miles now, so got a long way to go. A little washed up, but like I said, I'm motivated and ready to get back out there. So thank you all. We can definitely talk about that as we go. But thank you for coming on. I had a couple general questions and a couple fun questions if you still have some time.
Yeah, I'm free. Let's go.
All right. Awesome. So you're a fellow running nerd like Gerard and I. What are your thoughts on the advances in shoe technology and carbon plating? And how do you feel that's changed the running world?
You mean cheating shoes?
Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, now that it's like more accessible and out there in the open, um, I'm not having as much of an issue with it as I was maybe say at the 2016 Olympics when Galen Rupp is the only one wearing the shoes, and all the other athletes are fending for themselves. Maybe I guess the way they came about a little bit shady, but now that every manufacturer has their shoe out on the market and it's accessible and you don't have to pay an arm and a leg. Yeah, they're more expensive, but they're reasonably priced as opposed to, when they first came out and they were selling on the secondary market for five, six, $700.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree with that. I think when the level of playing the when the playing field is level at the high level, it's fair game. When, like you said, Rupp was the only one. Obviously, that's an unbalanced competition. What are your thoughts on the American running scene? A lot of new things popping up with trials and miles. I know Gerard competed in that. The Olympic qualifiers, American Track League. How do you think the scene looks right now in the U.S. of A?
Yeah, I think in the US of A, it's looking pretty good. These free live streams that have Trials of Miles have been putting on are like I think phenomenal for the track and field nerds. It's putting a lot of pressure on.
Flow
I
track.
think the flow track, yes, definitely, but it's putting I think a lot of pressure on even the higher end, ESPN, NBC. What Trials of Miles just gave us for free in Austin. Um, I think completely outdoes anything I've seen in the last few years from even paying for. So I think it's all headed in the right direction. Chris Chavez, who's with
I had him
Citius now.
on.
Yes, you have.
Yeah, yeah.
He's such a running nerd, and I think he's doing such a great job. Um, and now, Kyle Merber, who's a friend of SRC, he worked at SRC, and now he's getting into that side of things and being an elite athlete. He knows um, what goes on that side, and now being a fan, he's kind of helping formulate a plan going forward. Um, so I think for the track fans out there, it's on the rise, and content is everywhere.
Yeah, I really think I that was like the greatest or the best event I've watched in recent memories with Merber and Chavez, and they had Morgan McDonald on, and he
Oh
does great
yeah.
YouTube content. Tim and Elite, whether you like them or not, they're producing great YouTube content. So I think that's what we need to get people interested in our sport. It's not up to NBC, it's not up to Flow Track, it's up to the athletes, and I think we're definitely heading in the right direction. Um, Bouncing off of running, I don't know if this is true. Are you a basketball fan?
I am a basketball fan. Yes.
Okay, who's your team?
I'm a Knicks fan.
Okay, thank God we're Knicks guys. So you want to talk about that quickly, and then
Yeah, we could talk about the Knicks.
all right, yeah. So how do you thoughts on the season? Favorite player and favorite Knicks memory? How about that?
Well, I might be a little fraud on this because growing up, I was more of a Michael Jordan guy
That's fair.
than
Best player
than
ever.
a Ewing and Oakley guy. So, but as an adult, it's been Knicks all the way. Um, so Brendan Barrett's brother, Casey, he's a huge Knicks guy. So we kind of text back and forth every now and then about the Knicks. Um, so right now, the season, I love Thibodeau. Like he embodies like almost everything that I'm about. Like just working hard. I played basketball growing up, so like my big thing was defense. Like I wasn't the biggest guy on the court, but I was one of the fastest and definitely had the best endurance. So I could just stay in front of guys all game long, and I just love that about him. The team is young, so there's some growing pains, like the Spurs game the other night,
That was a tough one.
but the three previous games when they won three in a row, all good stuff. Um, so I just like Thibodeau's. He's not going to back down. Like, yes, we're rebuilding, but we're going to try and win as many games as we can. And if we get to the playoffs, that's where we want to be. And I like that mentality, like no quit mentality, because if you go into the season, like the 76ers did for so many years of like tanking and rebuilding, and then just now they're playing well, but Thibodeau wants to build it and be competitive at the same time, which I can really appreciate.
Yeah, I really hope they stick with him for the long term. My favorite player is Frank Ntilikina. Like we were saying, hard nosed defense, can hit a corner to
Yes.
three, athletic. Who's your favorite guy on the team right now?
It's such a bummer that Thibodeau just for whatever reason doesn't have Frank in the rotation regularly. It's just a bummer.
Yeah.
You know, RJ Barrett, and definitely quickly. I think he was like the steal of the draft right now.
Yeah, he could be all rookie team or whatever that's called.
Oh, definitely. And I think the addition of Derrick Rose, I know Derrick Rose was on the Knicks previously, and a lot of fans were giving, I guess, Knicks PR like flack for photoshopping Derrick Rose photos in the Knicks uniform. But it feels different this time around. Like the regime is completely different, the atmosphere is completely different, and I think he's at a different part of his career, and I think that was a good addition for the young guys.
Yeah, definitely a good veteran presence. What else did we have? So just a couple more questions. Thank you again so much for doing this. Anytime you want to come back on, something to promote, just want to chat about whatever, I'd love to have you back on.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. I'm talking anything sports related, definitely.
Awesome. So the two questions I ask every guest. The first one I amended a little bit to be less morbid. I usually ask if you could have dinner with any dead celebrity or athlete, who would it be and why? I'm gonna add that to alive and or dead.
Oh. Well, alive and or dead, it has to be Michael Jordan. Um, I
I
mean,
agree.
when Last Dance came out, I just ate that up. Like I said, he was my favorite athlete growing up. Just, you know, I don't know, like I can't get into LeBron James right now, but I'm sure there were people when in the 90s that couldn't get into Jordan at the time. But as a kid, I just ate it all up. So I'd have to say Jordan.
Awesome. Yeah, that's hard to critique that. Ultimate competitor, paved the way for guys like Kobe, and The Last Dance was amazing. So I definitely agree with you on that one. I think you're the first Jordan we had to answer that question. A lot of mostly Kobe, but obviously it makes sense that you'd be the first Jordan because I never gave the option for anyone alive. So just put that together. But anyway, thank you again, and yeah. Last question before I let you go. Uh, what would
Sure.
you what would you like your outro song to be?
So I knew this question was coming, and I've been trying to prepare for it. Um, and so, quick story.
Mm-hmm.
A few days ago, Desi Linden had a picture on Instagram, or a post on Instagram, where she was running in the snow, and the caption read, um, "As cold as an old ice cream sandwich, as focused as Mr. Miyagi." And I'm like, that sounds so familiar. I know this quote, and you know how Instagram only like previews like the first line or two.
Right.
And so obviously now I have to hit more info, and it's the first line of Tangerine by Glass Animals. So that will be my outro. Tangerine, Glass Animals. I think that line has so many different meanings, and that post by Desi just like brought that all to light, I think.
Definitely,
So
yeah. It's a great choice, and she's another hard nosed athlete, like we were talking about with her Boston win. That was really inspiring.
exactly, you know, she was running in the snow, so she was cold, but also she had this like laser focus on her face, like I'm cold inside. I have like no feelings about what's going on around me. I'm just gonna run like I always do and not worry about what's going on. And you see that, like you said, she wins Boston. She has not so good races, but she's so focused on what she's doing that whenever the big day comes, she's always ready to go. And
Yep.
I think I think that sums it up pretty good. So
Yeah, definitely. Be sure to check out Sayville Running Company, Instagram, Twitter. Do you want to shout everything out quickly?
yeah, so Sable Running on Instagram and Facebook. Smithtown Run Co. on Instagram and Facebook, and then our event page, SRC Timing, on Instagram. If you're looking for any virtual events or in-person events, that's where all of our information will be. And again, all the content, we're pretty active on those platforms. So if you need anything running related, hit us up.
Definitely, I can definitely vouch. I bought shoes from Gerard, and um, the whole shebang beyond just the shoes, like we were saying, the running community, and you guys are really helping out Long Island. So thank you very much for that, and thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, and I look forward to working with everybody.
All right, thanks guys. Thank you for listening.